Howdy! Welcome to Aspire Mountain Academy. I'm Professor Curtis, your instructor for this course in Introductory Statistics. In less than 10 minutes, this video provides even more practice in using the multiplication rule to perform calculations. Let's get started. First up, we've got an example problem where we're looking at medical helicopters. So a group was studying the usage of these helicopters and patient survival. And here's what they found. They found that 47,637 patients were transported by helicopter, and 111,874 patients were transported on the ground, presumably in an ambulance. So there's a total of 159,511 patients, and let's say one of those patients is in the study is randomly selected. So what's the probability that one subject was transported by helicopter? Go ahead, stop the video here and try this out on your own, and then come back and we'll see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did with this. So the probability that the one person is going to be selected is the part over the whole. So the part that's transported by helicopter is the 47,637 over the whole, which is the total number of patients. So you got to add the helicopter and the ground transports together. So that gives us the 159,511. Divide that out and we get 0.299. That's the probability that one randomly selected patient was transported by helicopter. Now, what if 5 of the subjects in the study are randomly selected without replacement? What is the probability that all 5 are transported by helicopter? Go ahead, stop the video here and try this out, and then come back and we'll see how you did. Okay, I hope you calculated it this way. You've got 5 patients randomly selected. So you've got to calculate the probability of the first one. So it's the 47,637 over 159,511, just as we saw previously. Then the next one, because we're selecting without replacement, we've got to take one away from the part and one away from the whole. And we do that with each successive patient that we're doing. We've got 5 of them. We multiply this out together. And when we punch that out in our calculator, we end up with 0.002375. So alternatively, okay, we could recognize that 5 subjects out of 159,511 were definitely within that 5% threshold. So if we wanted to, we could calculate this using that dependency rule of thumb. And if we did that, this is what we would get. We'd get 0.002376. So you can see that the numbers are not all that different. So sometimes it really is helpful to use that rule of thumb. You can get to your answer much quicker without sacrificing that much in accuracy. So one other thing I want to keep in mind is that you can do this either way, okay? But if you decide to do it using the dependent events, so you're calculating it with all of this long list of stuff, sometimes these numbers get really big when I punch it in my calculator. And so in that case, I'll just take something like this and calculate it out in Excel, because the computer can handle a lot more bigger numbers than what my little hand calculator can handle. So if I'm just using this rule of thumb, so I assume that they're independent, I'm just going to calculate that with my calculator. But if I'm doing something like this, yeah, I'll typically turn to Excel, because sometimes the numbers get so big it just becomes too much for my calculator to handle. Let's look at another example involving reliability. So oftentimes, engineers will design systems with redundancies in order to improve reliability. And reliability is just the probability that your part or subsystem is going to function, according to design within a given space of time. So in other words, it's just going to do what it's supposed to do. So let's say we've got a job seeker who wants to ensure that he or she will wake up early enough so they don't miss an important morning interview. The alarm clock that they're using has a 7.3% daily failure rate. So that means every day there's a 7.3% chance that the alarm clock will not work as intended. What's the probability that the alarm clock will not work the following morning? Go ahead, stop the video here, and then come back when you're done with your calculations, and we'll see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did. So you've got 0.073. That's the failure rate that the alarm clock's not going to work. And that's the probability that the alarm clock is not going to work. They're one and the same. Now, what if you have two such alarm clocks? What's the probability that they will both fail? Again, pause the video, do your calculations, come back, and we'll see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did. So we've got two alarm clocks here, so we're going to use our multiplication rule, and the failure rate is the same for each day, so the failure rate is going to be the same for each clock as well. So we're going to take the two 0.073, multiply them together, and out comes our probability that both will fail, which is 0.0053. Now, what's the probability of three alarm clocks failing? Again, pause the video, come back, and we'll see how you did. All right, so here you should actually be taking three of those failure rates and multiplying them together because you've got three alarm clocks. So notice that we keep adding redundancies to our system, that the probability that we're going to fail keeps going down and down and down. But it's never going to be zero, okay? Because we're just going to keep multiplying numbers together. So we're going to get closer and closer to zero, but we're still never actually reach zero. So it's still always possible to have failure. And eventually there comes a point where you just stop adding redundancies because it's just not worth it. And here in this case, I would have stopped adding the redundancy here with the second clock because you don't really get appreciably that much more reliability with the third alarm clock. So I would have just stopped here and saved those extra resources, not put them into my system. Here's another problem involving reliability, and this one, it tends to confuse a lot of students. So let's just walk through this one together. We have the configurations of components, and they can affect how you configure them together can affect your reliability. So you could put things together in series, which as you see here from the diagram, you're putting things one after the other, or you can put them in parallel. Now, suppose that we have a laptop manufacturer who wants to include a redundant breaker in the design in order to protect against power surges. So the breakers have a 95% reliability, which means they have a 5% failure rate. And we can arrange them either in series, one after the other, or we can arrange them in parallel. So what's the probability that two breakers in the series will protect the laptop? Well, if they're in series, that means you've got one right after the other. And these are breakers, which means in order for the series configuration to protect your laptop, both of these breakers, just one of these breakers have to be working. You don't need both of them, just one of them. Because if this one fails and this one works, then it stops the surge. If this one works, then it doesn't matter if this one works or not because the surge is stopped here. So we just need one of them to work. So at least one of these is working, okay? As we'll learn here in a future mini lecture, the probability of at least one is 1 minus the probability of none. And the probability that none of these work is the probability that the first one doesn't work and the probability that the second one doesn't work. So this is how we calculate that out. We punch that out and there's our reliability. If we put them in parallel, the probability will change, okay? Because all we're doing then is saying just, they both have to work in order to protect the unit. So we're going to just multiply the 0.95 together and that gives us our probability, our reliability. So which arrangement provides better protection? Well, obviously the one with the higher reliability. So it's going to be the series and not the parallel. And that brings us to the end of this mini lecture. I hope you found it helpful. You can find more mini lectures for this and other courses at AspireMountainAcademy.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.